Hi everybody. Sometimes I don't know what I want to make. I just feel like making something. And then I'll get something like this. What I wanted to talk about was just finding a piece of material that could be many things and, using your creativity to see what you see. I'm just going to use this frame now to have a little look. Can you see I've got a lovely background for a garden there? Or maybe a butterfly here? Or maybe it goes acrossways, like that. In fact, maybe that's a bunch of birds on a line or something. The more I look at something, the more I see. And see, there's a poppy. And that's what I want to talk about. It's like, if you see an interesting piece of fabric, just get it and start to look at it like you look, well, I've said it before, clouds in the sky, looking at things differently. We all know that this is meant to be a pattern of leaves and ferns, I think. But I was having a look at it before and I picked out a little section here. And I thought, my grandson at the moment, he's like 1.5, really into fish. And I thought, well, that kind of looks like the aquarium we've been making for him. I can see some plants. I can see a fish with a few little stitches on that. I could definitely see a fish. Or here. Those bands of colour just automatically suggested it. So I might do that. Might do something else. But so many parts of it are pretty. And quite often a piece of material from me will just suggest something. And that's where I'll go with it. So I'm still thinking that I really like this, but now I'm thinking, see how when I was like that, it was all up in one line. I'm going to go further away now. A bit hard to believe that you've got 4 fish swimming in one line like that. So in that instance, I thought I could maybe pick a different angle. Pick some of those fish. At least now they're a bit more staggered, But I think I can make it work somehow. So I think I've made a bit of a work for myself here, but I said I'll do fish, so fish is going to be it. At the moment, I'm just going to use a fabric marker that will disappear. And that's just to give me an idea of that's the section that I figure I'm going to want. And whilst that line's still there, before it disappears quickly, I will just cut around it so that I'm ready. So there we are. This is the beginning stage. And if I bring that closer, can you see why I thought there was possibly a fish here and here and here and here? I could make them into fish. That's definitely could be some water weed. If I wanted, I could continue making more fish. Make that a plant. I've got a basic idea there. So with just a few embroidery stitches, let's see if we can turn it into what is just a bunch of blobs into something. All right. So I just grabbed a few things that I thought would help me be able to bring this picture out. Oops, sorry. There's some hairy thread. Looks like water weed to me. And just a selection of colours. Now you might be able to see I got some of these shiny ones out. Lovely. So I got them out because, well, fish are quite often iridescent, aren't they? So something like that would be nice. I got out some different greens because I thought that would be useful for the foliage, and some colours that sort of match in, some that give it a tone, brings different tones out. I've got a variegated one, a green and a pinky one here. So I really used this as my palette and then decided what ones I might want to pick out on top of that. You know, I wanted a little bit more gold or something, and that's how you start. So I'm just trying to do some long stitches. That'll just give me that shape that I want to fan out. Doesn't matter if they're quite as close together as you want. You can go back later. I just want to get the basic shape in. Now don't be fussy about what kind of fish it is, because I honestly have not looked at the details of what fish I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to do a fish. Already it looks more like a fish. Your imagination is telling you, ah, look at that, it's a fish, rather than a blob. Now a few seed stitches. That looks nice. Can you see how I'm not really worrying too much about finishing any one thing? I'm just using this one colour and I'm getting my ideas down, my basic shapes that I think I'm going to want. Bringing in a bit of colour, bringing in a little bit of definition so that I know what it is. I'm really quite pleased with that, turning the blobs into something else. It's all about training your eye to sort of see patterns and things that I look at materials and I see bark, or I see rivers, or I see all kinds of different things that it reminds me of, and that's how I work. But it's a good activity. It's really creative. But you could have picked a material that has flowers and just used it to do a little bit of embroidery on. Kind of naive looking, but yes, little fish. And I've got a tiny bit left on that needle, so I'm just going to do a few little yellow bits to brighten that up. Tiny little seed stitches, which I use as well, lots of things, let's face it. I use it as highlighting in this, but also, you know, it's kind of like a reminiscent of scales, perhaps. Well, I've got an idea, and probably this will be a fish as well. Maybe this will be one poking in the edge. But, you know, I did want this in. Yes. And I was wondering whether we could suggest even more that it's an aquarium. I mean, it's not blue, but perhaps, see, this is a variegated yarn with lovely blues and greens. Very pale, but pretty. And what happens if I took, you know, some stitches of that and just did some flowing curved lines? That might suggest a little bit of water, a bit of movement. Right, as you can see, I've added in some of these lines just to suggest movement and give it a sort of tinge of bluey green. It's a variegated thread, so it's a bit of all colours. Sometimes it's crossed, they've crossed over each other, but they're always in that gentle curve which suggests movement, like air or wind or water. But I I would also like to add in some of these things because, gosh, that's pretty. And you know, it just looks like it is weed, doesn't it? I don't want to add in too much. But when I do, I'll couch it on, you know, just a little stitch here and there over and above it, around it to adhere it to the background fabric. Maybe I'll wait on that. What else? I did get out this deliciously shiny one, so I'm just going to see. That's because I can't resist. I might do the little seed stitch again because I'm undecided as to what I need to do, so I quite like the little seed stitch. So I need to make it more obvious. I'm just going to put another seed stitch there. Like, one of the things that it would need would be some sort of separation here. Yes, this is a stem stitch. It's good for going around corners. It's good for making a strong outline. That's what I'm trying to do, is to differentiate the body from that fin shape that I'm making up the top. And then whilst it's leading me down here, maybe I can do a little bit of, maybe I can do a bit of this. So that where it joins the body is sort of also shaded in a little bit separate. Yeah, it's okay. Don't they quite often have little, you know what stitch would work well here? A little blanket stitch. Yeah. So, keeping this thread out the way, if we did that, we could make that look like a little fin with an edge. Yeah, that would be very useful there, I think. Continue that. Maybe a few lines going up here. I'll add to that later, but at least it's using up the end of this thread. I don't think I'll get much more. This will be my last. I do want to bring another colour in. I'm going to bring this beautiful burnt orange. And I'm just going to start with some little tiny seed stitches here, just because it does have orange there. So all I'm doing is picking out colour that's already there. Eventually we'll put a little eye on him and that will really pick him up. But just for now, I'm just going to do that. Maybe a few here as well. Really, the reason I wanted to use it was because I wanted to bring it down here. We should really end off and not travel, but just for the sake of it, I'm just going to show you what I want to do. Here, I think. I'll do another little blanket stitch. Oops. So as you can see, that blanket stitch has worked out pretty well perfect for little fins or tails, and I'll use that quite a lot on these fishes because it has worked out very well indeed. Speaking of other colours, how about this absolutely beautiful shiny goldy yellowy orange colour? I'm really seriously wanting this fish now to show up, so what can we do? You know, I might try some chain stitch to see how that works. Just get a single thread. We may surprise ourselves by having the thing that looked least like a fish ending up our best. Sometimes it's surprising. So that was a whole line, but how about if we did some detached chain? That's where we just use one like that. If you want to know more about stitches, I do have videos where I show you how to do different chains and things. I quite like that. That really does catch the light. And this one certainly did need some tweaking. Now that top fish looked like it had a bit of a crew cut rather than a fin on the top there, so I'm just changing the shape a little bit, making it taller on at the beginning and lower at the end. I'm using a gold shiny thread again. It looks pretty nice. It catches the light and it's just sets it off nicely. Every now and again I like to pop it in that frame just to have a look, see how it looks as a whole picture. And now I've decided that blob over on the right hand side could be a lovely fish coming in facing the other big fish. So I've decided if I just change the leading edge of it and made it poke out a little bit more, then that would be the face of the fish. So just filling it in with some yellowy gold colour and just changing the shape so he's got more of a nose. So that's looking a little bit more realistic, I think. A nicer shape to start with anyway. So as I've done before, whilst I had that yellowy gold on, I did a few seed stitches on the body, and now I've gotten that lovely shiny blue and I'm making some fins on the bottom using that blanket stitch again. So it's all of the same stitches again and again I'm using to different effect, but they work well, so that's good enough. Now whilst I've got it on, I'm just going to also do some straight stitches on that tail just to bring in that lovely turquoisey blue teal kind of colour. It's shiny and silky and just adds us something special. There it is. I'm using the same colour, turning it round and doing that same sort of affair underneath here to be the fins at the bottom. So while I'll probably keep going back and playing with the fish, let's have a little look-see at this water weed we've got over here. I've taken the pink, the lighter shade, just adding a few variations of colour there by putting in some lighter patches of seed stitch on some of those leaves. Just breaking up the expanse, I think, just adding something. And then I might bring in some green because it is meant to be foliage, so maybe that'll suggest it a little bit better if I bring in a little bit of green and do a bit of stitching in there. So just doing the same as I did on the fish, a few seed stitches, a little bit of straight running stitch, bit of chain, and whatever I think of. But now I am going to start with this couching on of this lovely furry kind of thread. So you just knot underneath, you lay the thread down and you do a couple of stitches to anchor it, and then traveling underneath you bring your needle up and over the thread, trapping it, and then underneath you travel a little bit further and do the same. Now I do have a lovely video on couching of different fabrics, so you might want to see that one for the proper details on that. That's a simple thing. So we're just going to do that, and then maybe use some French knots, bringing the thread up from underneath, winding it round the needle several times, and the needle back down again into the fabric, and you get these lovely knots that look, make it look more natural. So a few more things to just finish off. Let's put a little bit more gold on this fish here. So we're pretty well at the end with just a little bit of tweaking. I will put a nice little eyeball on each of the fishes I'll use a dark grey, and it will be a French knot, and then I'll go around it with a white thread, just a few stitches around it to really make it show up. But you could just keep going as long as you like on this kind of project. It's for your enjoyment, and you just do as much or as little as you want. But it's really just to show you the different things that you can do to look at things differently and to make a fun project out of what you might have a piece of fabric at home that speaks to you. I hope so. My name is Tracy from Art Fibre Stitch, and thank you for watching. If you would like to see more, just don't forget to subscribe and to like my channel. And there are plenty more links in the description below if you're trying to find me anywhere else. Thank you.